I'm Jethro Jones from Transformative Principal, a proud member of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to right now. The opinions expressed are those of the individual hosts. Make sure you check out the other great podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com. And get ready because the learning begins in 3, 2, 1.
Coming up on episode number 127 of the House of EdTech podcast, I've got a House of EdTech recommendation. I'm going to have a conversation with myself about how I'm bringing podcasting into my classroom. And for the first time in 5 years, I'm introducing a new segment on the show. Strike up the band. Welcome to the House of EdTech podcast. I am your host, Chris Nessie. The House of EdTech explores how technology is changing the way teachers teach and the impact that technology is having in education. I discuss technology that is changing our classrooms and schools, and I share tools and tips that you can hear today and use tomorrow. You're going to hear the stories of teachers, leaders, and creators just like you. The purpose? Whether you use it or not, technology is changing the way you teach and how your students learn. Hey, welcome back to the House of EdTech podcast. I can't believe it is February already, and now I've dated this episode. 1/12 of the year down, 11/12 to go. I think that's accurate math. That's why I'm a social studies teacher. Glad to have you with me for some anytime, anywhere professional development in the EdTech space. And this is a very fun episode, one that I'm very excited to share everything that I'm going to be talking about today. Super, super excited, as my friends Matt Miller and Casey Bell would say, from the Google Teacher Try podcast. So where to begin? Well, I mean, I've got the recommendation and everything that I teased, and I don't have that much, actually, really, I don't have anything to talk about here at the top of the episode, but I'm really excited, and you will certainly learn out. Yeah, there you go. You will certainly know why I'm excited in just a few minutes. But I am going to start with my new segment. That's right. After 5 years and 126 episodes, I finally came up with a new segment that I can't say is going to be regular to every episode of the podcast, but I do think it will come up from time to time where it is appropriate. So this is not going to be a regular segment. I think it works right now. And hey, it's my podcast, and maybe it's time to start experimenting after 5 years. And as much as I talk about having fun podcasting, I think it's time to really start having some fun. So let's get to my brand new segment. So this brand new segment, which I'm introducing here in February of 2019, I am calling the House of EdTech Continuation. What is the continuation, you ask? Well, I'm actually going to be a little bit more dedicated to continuing to talk about things that I've talked about on previous episodes. And I'm going to start right away with something I talked about just last episode, in episode number 126, where I shared some great must-have Chrome extensions. Well, I spoke, and many of you listened and shared some of your own recommendations. I thought, why not continue the conversation as I've talked about in all other episodes and share them with you? So we have some great submissions. And when I posted and promoted episode 126 on Instagram, now, if you didn't know, the House of EdTech is on Instagram. You can follow the show at House of EdTech and add it to your Instagram lineup. I put out in my Instagram stories, the fact that here's episode 126, and I put into the story the Ask a Question story widget, I guess I'll call it, about, what are some of your favorite Chrome extensions. So I got some extensions that I did not name in the episode, and some that I did, but I will shout those nice folks out in just a little bit. So all of these recommendations come from Instagram, and make sure you follow these people on Instagram. And here we go. Let's take a look here. First up, we have Wakelet, and this was recommended by, I'm going to go with my public address announcing 50-50 shot at this. And the Instagram ID is Buist Bunch, BuistBunch. And the Wakelet Chrome extension lets you save any web page anywhere, whether it's an interactive guide to a topic you're passionate about or simply a set of must-read links to send to a friend. Wakelet helps you collect the content from across the web, and it makes it look great. In just a couple of clicks, you can save and organize links to articles, videos, tweets, and just about anything else on the internet. I will include a link to the Wakelet Chrome extension out in the show notes for this episode, out at chrisnessy.com/127. And thank you, Buist Bunch, for sharing that with me. Next one came in from friend of the podcast and my co-host on Podcast PD, AJ Bianco. His Instagram handle is at AJ Bianco, and he shared Instant Learning. Now, what does the Instant Learning Chrome extension do? Well, it allows you to add instructional content on any web page. It's really pretty interesting. And I mean, I've used this before, not the extension, but I've used Insert Learning before. But what it does is it saves us as teachers and students time while keeping our students engaged. You can insert questions, discussions, and insight directly onto any website. It kind of, like the name says, you insert learning opportunities onto existing web pages without, I mean, you're not hacking the websites, but you're adding content over top of the site that your students can interact with. So when students go to a website, they can respond to questions and discussions, and you can see that insight, and they can even take their own notes using this extension or because you added it. So you can use Insert Learning to turn any website into an interactive learning experience. You can check out their website, insertlearning.com. And again, I will link to the Chrome extension in the show notes for this episode. And thank you to AJ for sharing Insert Learning. Next up, we have Bitly, and that comes to us from friend of the podcast, JP Prezavento. His Instagram handle is JPPrez. And what the Bitly Chrome extension does, just like Bitly that we've been using for years, gives you quick access to Bitly. So you can shorten, measure, and optimize links that you want to share on the web. So the Bitly Chrome extension is fully integrated with your Bitly account. And if you don't have a Bitly account, it's probably a good idea so you can manage and track the links that you're creating. Or you don't have to, but if data is important and you want to know if things are getting clicked on and used, certainly creating a free account isn't going to hurt. So with the account, you can copy, customize, and you can share your links right from your browser. And I will link to the Bitly Chrome extension in the show notes. Next up, this was one that was new to me, and I immediately installed both of these. So this is a twofer, and two separate people recommended this when I shared this episode, again, episode 126 on Instagram. And that was Tab Scissors and Tab Glue. And these were both recommended by Instagram users EdTechTosa and Aubrey Diorio. And Aubrey's Instagram name is Aubrey Diorio. So make sure you check both of these fine educators out on Instagram. So what does Tab Scissors and Tab Glue do? Let's start with Tab Scissors because then Tab Glue is going to make a whole lot of sense. So Tab Scissors splits a window into two at the selected tab. So if you have multiple tabs open or you have two tabs open, basically whatever tab you're on, you activate the Tab Scissors and it will then break your Chrome into two windows and put them side by side on the screen. So this simple tab organization tool divides one window into two. If you have at least two tabs selected in the Chrome window, it will split that window into two smaller side-by-side windows. All the tabs on the left side of the selected tab stay in the left window, and all the rest will move into a window to the right. It's really, really pretty slick. It is especially helpful for those who have lots of tabs open at the same time. I'm talking to you, Bianco. This extension works great with Tab Glue, which, what does Glue do? It puts things back together. So if you have split your windows with Tab Scissors, and now you need to put everything back together like Humpty Dumpty, I guess, you can put it back together using the tab glue extension. And I will link to both of these in the show notes out at chrisnessy.com/127. And before I end this, let me say thank you to everybody who submitted extra Chrome extensions. And there's lots out there, some that I didn't mention, some that I didn't mention even here that got recommended. So if you've got more Chrome extensions, that'll be a reason to bring back this new segment, the House of Ed Tech continuation. And again, with anything that I do on the show, if you have something you want to add, head out to chrisnessy.com/feedback, share your thoughts, send me audio, send me a video, however you want to get your thoughts to me, and you want to bring up something I've already talked about, that's totally okay. And I'm happy to bring this new segment back where it's appropriate. And one last thing before I go out of this segment, thank you to The Eager Teacher and S. Fessich. That should sound familiar because that's Dr. Sam Fessich on Instagram, both Instagram users, for also mentioning ones that I had mentioned in the episode as being their favorites. I hope you enjoyed the first ever House of Ed Tech continuation, and on we go. Now, while I'm really excited to get to my featured content this episode, where I am going to talk about how I'm bringing podcasting into my classroom, I do want to give you the EdTech recommendation. Here we go. In the digital age, it is far easier to take and share photos than ever before. We know this. Pretty much every device you pick up can take a picture. So basic photo editing tools and photo editing skills are an important component of today's learning and communication. The gold standard, and I'm very fortunate in this aspect, the gold standard is Adobe Photoshop, which I am fortunate to have, but is mostly used by professional designers and editors. A number of years ago, unfortunately, for people who enjoy Adobe, or those who have the money, Adobe did move to a subscription model for their suite of awesome software. And it's not cheap because it's no longer buy it and you own it. You have to continuously pay for it. And even with an educator discount, it's still an ongoing monthly subscription that is not easy for people like, you and me to keep up with. So the version that I have is Adobe, the Master Collection CS6. So that's the last version of all of their awesome software before it went subscription, which still allows me to do a lot of amazing things, all the graphic work that I do, etc., etc. But this is not about Adobe Photoshop. Today, I want to recommend PicMonkey. PicMonkey is a perfect choice for people who are just learning to edit photos, students, or people who just want to do basic photo editing. PicMonkey is freemium, so mostly free. There are parts you can pay for, but it allows you to edit photos without having to register. You could just drop in a photo and you can begin to edit, and when you're done, you can save it right back to your computer. You can crop, resize, rotate, as well as edit the brightness, contrast, or sharpness. You can add different filters and effects, and you can also add text. The interface is super easy to use, and the tools are laid out in a very simple fashion. Besides basic photo editing, you can also create collages, and you can choose from a number of predefined layouts. Again, PicMonkey is freemium software, so you can pay to get more advanced features. You could try PicMonkey by going to picmonkey.com. And that's my House of Ed Tech recommendation. I am so excited to share what I'm about to share with you, my loyal House of Ed Tech listeners. Or even if this is your first time listening to the show, I am very excited that you are going to get to hear what I'm about to share with you about bringing podcasting into my classroom. So what I want to share with you starts with a story. Just kind of bear with me because I've got notes here, but I'm just super excited to tell you that I'm bringing podcasting into my classroom in a big way. So first I want to tell you how I did it and who helped and what the results are going to be as I sit here today. Back in December 2018, I saw, somebody that I know on Twitter that they had just concluded a successful Donors Choose campaign. And they were very excited that they were getting, I forget what, but they were getting something for their classroom, for their kids and, elementary school kids. And I thought to myself, it would be really cool if I could start a Donors Choose campaign and get it funded and get podcasting equipment into my classroom and get my students podcasting, get other kids in the school podcasting, and, introduce it to my colleagues and administrators and just bring something that I have so much passion for into my school and sort of blend two things that I enjoy. I thought December, it's getting towards the end of the year. Maybe I'll submit a donorschoose.org project, and like a couple of years ago, maybe magically all that's being posted on Donors Choose will get funded. And if I'm not there, then it can't get funded. I thought, let me just take a chance. So I put together a project to bring podcast equipment into my classroom. I didn't just go for, the minimal, inexpensive stuff. I put together what I think is a mamma jamma podcast equipment package in terms of microphones, recorders, hardware, all the things. I mean, I put together items that I myself, it would take me quite some time to save up for. And even then I would hesitate pulling the trigger to make the purchase for myself. But I figured if it's going to be other people's money, why not shoot for the sky or the stars or the moon, or just go dream really big. And again, maybe it'll be a case of, some major benefactor, or donator just funds everything on all of Donors Choose. And, maybe I would be able to benefit from that and get lucky. So I put together this podcast package and I promoted it on social media. And my plan was, at the time I had, under 6,000 followers on Twitter. And I mean, gosh, if I could just get half the people that followed me on Twitter to donate just $1, then, my project would get funded and, a bunch of people would be able to say, hey, I helped out. That didn't happen. So I put it out on social media, and I was fortunate enough to get a couple of individual donors. So I want to shout out Ryan Mitchell, Stephen Hurley, Eric Geis, and a former coworker of mine, Leslie Guarino. 4 people who donated anywhere between $15, $20, $25 between the 4 of them, each doing that. I was off to a nice start relatively quickly after launching this Donors Choose campaign. And then the holidays came and I sort of sat on it. And as I'm recording this on February 2nd, about 2 weeks ago, I had thought to myself, I set a deadline or an end date to my Donors Choose campaign to be the end of February. So I should probably start to promote it again, because there was no magical benefactor that funded all of the Donors Choose projects. So I said, all right, I need to start to promote this again. So I put out a couple of tweets and, no traction. They go off into the abyss that is Twitter. And then 2 weeks ago, on a Thursday morning, I get an email from Donors Choose saying, basically, congratulations, your project has been fully funded. I was in the middle of class. My students were working on a DBQ, and my jaw and my whole body just about hit the floor. One anonymous donor, whether it's an individual or a corporation, I have no idea. They're anonymous. One anonymous donor funded the remaining 97% of my project. And this is what Donors Choose, what it says about this donor, because if you've ever done Donors Choose, then you see the people who donated and you thank them as those donations come in. So my last one says one anonymous donor, and here's what it said. This project has been brought to life thanks to support from an anonymous arts funder who believes that every child should have access to essential art materials and experiences. An education in the arts makes children well-rounded, engaged, and active citizens of the world. Now, I have no idea what one person or what group funded this, but I am so thankful that almost $2,100 and change was fully funded for my total project of about $2,300 when you include all the shipping and everything else that goes with it. So I from at that moment, I told my kids, I said, guess what? And I hadn't said anything to them about even doing this because it was a real shot in the dark. And I didn't want to disappoint them if it was, them asking me, oh, Mr. Nessie, did anybody fund it? How's it going? What's going on with the project? So I didn't want to get their hopes up. So I had kept it a secret the whole time. So in class, I tell them basically what I just told you up until, hey, the project is now funded. And they applauded. Each class was very excited and very enthusiastic. And, as I sit here recording this, we've already started to get some of the equipment because, it's like 2-day shipping from Amazon and using Best Buy Education. So all of this stuff is coming in. So what's been coming in? What was on my magical wish list to bring podcasting into the classroom? So here's what we're getting. For Rode is a company from Australia, 4 Rode Procaster dynamic microphones, which are XLR only. They are broadcast quality. They are heavy. And my students have even remarked that they could probably be used as a weapon. And I'm not going to disagree with them. These microphones are heavy. I also got 4 Rode PSM1 shock mounts. And these are the shock mounts built specifically for this microphone to go onto the boom arm that suspends the mic off a desk or a table. I have the Rode PS1 boom arm, and I have a different shock mount for the mic I normally use, which is the AT2005 from Audio-Technica. But I got the boom arm, I got the shock mount, I got the microphone. I also ordered 1 Zoom H6 digital audio recorder that allows me to connect 4 microphones via XLR cable to them or to the recorder at one time, and a 128 gigabyte SD card so I can record pretty much unlimited audio. No student in an 80-minute block is going to sit and record 128 gigabytes worth of audio. So we've got a way to capture, record, and then be able to connect, and we can do live streams. I can have my students creating podcasts, but I'm getting a little ahead of myself. But what's the plan? Oh, actually, what else did I get? See, there was something weird that happened, and this is purely storytelling at this point in terms of content, so I hope you're enjoying it. So when I got the feedback, but that I got the correspondence that said everything is being ordered, after 2 days, I got a thing that said, oh, certain things are no longer available from Best Buy Education. So I had to pick out different boom arms to hang the microphones on, and that brought me to Amazon for Business to order some replacement things, and they didn't have the same boom arms, so I actually had extra money that, and the nice thing about Donors Choose it, I don't get the money, so I was able to just kind of reallocate and pick out other things to get approved to be a part of the project. So I was able to also pick up some audio cables to connect headphones to, for the digital audio recorder for the Zoom H6, a headphone amplifier so my students can use their own headphones, and connecting this headphone amplifier to the Zoom H6, I can then connect up to 4 headphones to the device, and it amplifies it. So it's a powered headphone jack and the adapters that go with it, and some cable ties to make sure everything is organized when I set this up on an extra table that I have in my classroom. So it's just, as I sit here, I'm just really excited that, one, this worked out and I got lucky. I know that there are so many people who will put up projects that don't get funded. So I know I'm very fortunate, and I even express that to my students as well. But now what's the plan? Because again, I'm recording this on February 2nd, and by February 5th or 6th, I should have everything. So what's the plan, and how is this going to benefit my students? In a perfect world, I would have my 140 odd students, creating podcasts. But the problem is I don't teach a media course. I teach world history. So I am now trying to develop ideas, not to force in podcasting, but ways that I can now, when I say to students, you can create content as an alternative or as an option for projects in my project-based classroom. Now I get to take time to teach kids who are interested in this how to record audio, how to edit audio, and I'll be able to conduct mini lessons. So again, for 2 weeks, I've been, scribbling on a pad I keep on my desk, different ideas on how I can add audio recording to what I want to do in the classroom and how I can give students the opportunity, and I'm also, dreaming big. Is this something where I could have, my students who are freshmen maybe get involved in the morning announcements or start to do things live or broadcast audio or start a school online stream of a radio station, have them start to do that and, run a club. It could be really fun and give me a new way to connect with the students and have them grasp onto something that they might develop a passion for. Because up until now, this really hasn't been an option other than going into the TV production class, which TV and podcasting, two totally different worlds. How does this benefit students? Well, I'm going to be exposing to my students, exposing them to professional audio recording and, broadcast equipment that they might not otherwise have had access to until, getting to college. I mean, already I've got students who I started to show the gear to when I was doing like little unboxings in each class. I've had students, male and female, who are like, "Oh, Mr. Nessie, we could start a radio show." And, I was like, well, you'll have every opportunity to do that because I got this stuff for you guys to use, for the school to use, for other teachers to use. So now it's a matter of working to promote it and make sure that people know how it works, know that it's available, and, kind of going from there. I'm certainly open to suggestions and feedback, so if you send me an email, feedback@chrisnessie.com. Certainly, if you have ideas or things that you would do if you had this equipment that I could then turn around and actually do, please share your ideas with me. If you're not in the Facebook group, go over to chrisnessie.com/Facebook. You can share ideas there. Certainly a lot of nice things happening in the Facebook group. But again, I'm just really excited, and I'll make it work into the curriculum. And I know that my students are going to take full advantage of this. And once it's actually there and they can see the microphone set up and we can literally now start to hit record, I think it's going to be a really positive thing, especially whether it's through class or as an after school activity, to get my students literally using their voice and starting to tell their story and talk about the things that they're passionate about, whether it's music, sports, art. From getting to know my students this year, I have a lot of kids with a lot of diverse interests coming from all different backgrounds, whether they're from the United States or they came from another country. I've got really amazing young people that I get to work with each and every day. And that doesn't include the faculty. I work with a lot of amazing people, Bowtie Joe Juba. We're talking about starting some sort of podcast that would be for our colleagues. I want to, talk to my principal. I want to talk to the superintendent. Why can't we have, the ZPN, the Zebra Podcast Network, for, again, I teach at New Brunswick High School, which is home of the Zebras. So why can't ZPN be a reality where we're telling the stories of our school and our students? And I just think it's going to be awesome. So I'm looking forward to sharing in the future what's going on, what they're creating, and, hopefully you'll support them. And if you ever need my support to help set this up, if you're fortunate enough to get any level of equipment for your classroom or your school, I'm certainly going to have a lot of experience doing this in a school. So hopefully this will make me a little bit more valuable to everybody. I'm just super excited, and I'm glad I have a platform where I can share this story. And again, I don't share this to brag. I share it because if you want something, go for it. I wouldn't have this opportunity if I didn't take a chance and put it out there. At the same time, I had also, maybe a week or two before I even put this out, I applied to my district's education foundation and put in for a teacher mini grant, which was, again, I'm fortunate that I'm getting the $2,300 version of podcasting in the classroom, but I was also able to put together for this mini grant basically a similar thing that was just under $750 because that was the max amount for putting together one of these grants. That's the max you could get, $750. I haven't gotten that yet, and who knows, maybe I will, and I can add secondary equipment and options as well. But that was a unique experience because I put that together, and the whole time I'm thinking, what does the best look like? What would be the best equipment I would put in a classroom look like? What would that be? What would I get? And when I had to scale it down and make it fit within $750, I was able to do it, and it would certainly work. And if I didn't get this and I got that, I would certainly be making the same episode about bringing podcasting into my classroom and sharing all the things that I got. So I want to conclude this by saying it's not about the equipment. You know, you could certainly use less expensive hardware, software, and all the stuff. So it's like anything I've ever talked about where it doesn't matter what the technology is, so long as you have sound pedagogy and a plan and your students are engaged. But if you have the opportunity to put the best in front of your kids, go for it. Or if all you can do is put something in front of your kids, do that too. And again, if you have suggestions or ideas, send me an email, feedback@chrisnessy.com, or go out to chrisnessy.com/feedback for all the different ways that you can get in touch with me and share your thoughts about what I can do with my students as I now really, truly bring podcasting into my classroom. And now it's time for this episode's House of Ed Tech VIP. Congratulations to, and let's meet, Lee Wozniak. Lee is a middle school librarian and part-time youth services librarian from right here in New Jersey. She's an amateur genealogist. She's a Google certified educator, Flipgrid ambassador, as well as being a young adult literature freak, mystery lover, and sometime writer. Personally and professionally, Lee is interested in libraries, books, especially young adult lit, and technology. She's also into history, movies, pop culture, music, language, women's issues, genealogy, mysteries, food, and crafts. She blogs at bookinalia.wordpress.com, and that's bookinalia.wordpress.com. And you can connect with Lee on Twitter. She is at WozLeigh, and that's WozLeigh. Check out her blog, connect with her on Twitter, and congratulations, Lee. You are a House of Ed Tech VIP. Hey, thanks for checking out this episode of the House of Ed Tech podcast. 127 episodes down, and hey, sky's the limit because you guys know I love creating content. Now, something I'd like to mention here at the end of the episode, and I learned this from Dave Jackson, this whole episode was recorded on the Rode Procaster microphone. So one of these new ones that I got, I brought it home to test it, to play with it, make sure it worked. So I knew how to use it because I've never used a microphone that, in my opinion, is as good as this. So I would love to know what you think of the audio. I'm certainly going to listen to it and dissect it and pick it apart. But did you even notice? Send me an email, feedback@chrisnessy.com, and let me know what you think. But this microphone is beautiful. I will include a shot of it in the show notes out at chrisnessy.com/127. So that way you can see what it looks like in my studio, and you'll also have an idea of what it looks like in general. Now, if you enjoy the podcast, and I know that so many of you do me a favor. As always, you like it? Tell somebody else about the podcast. If you share it on social media, use the hashtag House of Ed Tech, or whether it's Twitter or Instagram, you can follow and tag the show at House of Ed Tech. The other thing you can do, if you like what I'm doing here, you can also become an awesome supporter. And many thanks to all of my awesome supporters, which include Anthony Arnault from the New Teacher podcast at newteacher.org, Eric Kurtz from controlaltachieve.com, Dan Gallagher from gallaghertech.edublogs.org, my newest awesome supporter, thank you so much to Mr. G. Carlos Garza, who hosts the Aced Tech podcast, which you could find at aced.tech. Thanks Peggy George from Classroom 2.0 Live, Jen Giffen from the Shooks and GIF podcast at bit.ly/Shooks and GIF. Thank you to Mark Grindell at Mark Grindell on Twitter, Jeff Herb from InstructionalTechTalk.com. Thank you Mike Messner at TeacherMike72. Of course, JP Prezavento from the Bits and Bytes of Education podcast over on jpprez.com. And thank you to Lynn Smargis at Lynn Smargis on Twitter, Scott Titmus, thank you Scott, at SD Titmus on Twitter, and Kyle Wilcox at Level Up Ed Tech on Twitter. Thanks guys for all your support. If you're interested in supporting the show, go out to chrisnessy.com/awesome. The next episode of the show will be episode number 128, and that will come right to you on February 17th, 2019. Until next time, thank you for learning with me, and remember, using technology isn't difficult. Just give it a try.